So hi everybody. I know I haven't really been talking too much so far this event. My name is David again. I'm the technical director for the Solar Pro Challenge. So what we're going to be talking about here in a second is scrutineering. And so I don't know if you've been socializing with some of the teams that have been here in the past, but scrutineering is definitely every year the most challenging event that we have in the Solar Pro Challenge. So as you get on the road, I mean, you're racing, you're able to strategize, you're able to actually compete in the event, but getting to the level to compete in the event, that's another thing entirely, and a very lengthy and intensive process that we do over a period of 3 days here at the Texas Motor Speedway. Good to go? Okay. Okay, so what is scrutineering? So the purpose of scrutineering is we just want to make sure that your vehicle is going to comply with the rules. With the Solar Pro Challenge, we want to make sure that everybody's held to the same level of construction, not only for safety, but also that everybody's going to be able to compete on an equal playing field. How we do that is we have to make sure that we examine all the vehicles. So we created this word called scrutineering, which is what we're doing with the vehicles. So we're going to be looking at them step by step through a process of 8 different stations, and that will allow us to establish if your vehicle is safe and if it does comply with the rules and regulations that we set forth in this event. So I'm going to hit on some of the big points today. If you have any questions or specifics, you're welcome to stop and ask for clarification. So in this event, we have 8 different stations. We have mechanical, electrical, tilt and turn, slalom, braking, endurance, road test, and electric solar. All of these different stations. So road test, that's only going to be occurring on the cross country. So if you're competing this year, that's something you'll have to be cognizant of. The electric solar is only pertinent to those electric solar vehicles that are going to be competing as well. So I want to preface this with all of this information is available on our website. So we also, in addition to the fact that we have our rules, and I want to state that don't use the scrutineering packet to design your car, use the rules, but we also have a scrutineering packet that allows you to examine through the process that we utilize to make sure that your car is safe and complies with the rules as well. And that's freely available on our website, so be sure to check that out.
Does the scrutineering packet have every question that's going to be asked to the team?
The scrutineering packet does not. It is a tool to ensure compliance, but yes.
Should teams read the scrutineering packet beforehand and know how to answer every question in the booklet?
Yes, they should. They very much should. But you want to be sure that the scrutineering packet does not include everything. You want to be sure that you're reading through the rules every single time, because this packet allows us to reference the points of the rules to ensure that you're complying. But it's not the rules itself. So I want to make sure that we establish the differentiation between the scrutineering packet and the rule book itself. Okay, so you come to the event, you're queued up, you start the day out on the first day. This year we're going to be making it mandatory that station 1 and 2 are going to have to be, you're going to have to visit those stations before you're able to, before the end of the day on the first day if you want to compete in the race. Now, for teams that have been here for a while, this hasn't been happening before, but we want to be sure that all vehicles are having the chance to be looked at, because these are the most challenging stations. And we have teams, last year we had 4 teams that didn't make it and couldn't compete in the event. And we're very serious about the fact that, particularly being a cross-country event and the size and scope of our organization, is we have to be there to provide accountability. So when you make it to the race, we're going to make sure that you comply with those rules, and we're going to give you a designated amount of time to do it. So make sure that you're responsible in your time and being prepared for when you come ahead of time. Okay, mechanical. So mechanical is the most problematic station that you'll encounter. No team has passed this in one go. About 50% of teams have some major alterations that need to occur on their vehicles. There will always be something small or something that will be caught, and the majority of times, these could be things from loose bolts or or a piece of tubing that's not completely welded. So we really thoroughly check these vehicles, and I encourage all of y'all to network and talk about experiences in the past with teams that have been here longer, and they can definitely share a perspective of what it's like to go through this from the other end. On our end, we're very cognizant of how we approach this, because we want to make sure that we're not being unfair to the teams, but we also want to ensure that you're being safe. So with mechanical, things add up really fast, and most of these issues, if not all, can be addressed if you're just paying very close attention when you're designing your car through looking at the rule packet. Look at it bit by bit, and if you have questions, be sure to ask those to us. One thing to point out is that one of the biggest issues that we have is dimensions. Every year we have a car that does not meet the dimension criterion, and we don't want to have to tie you to saw your vehicle or saw a part of your vehicle off. Famous story is the Houston Solar Car team. They came in, they were 3 millimeters over the length of their car. They had to take a sawzall to it and chop off the back of their car. Now that was a very substantial impact to their ability to collect energy, obviously. So we don't want to have that situation occur, but to give you a perspective, that's how serious we are about these things going through scrutineering. So make sure that you're reading and complying. Welding is something that we see every year as well. A good weld and a bad weld changes everything on the vehicle, because if you're coming into the competition and you have a spotty weld, what's the point in that roll bar if it's not connected to the rest of the frame? So make sure that as your students are learning how to weld, or if you're going to a professional welder, that's also a great resource. But depending upon the material, it can be very difficult. So make sure you do plenty of practice, and that you're constantly checking with your students to make sure that their welds and applications of the material are appropriate. Crush zones and roll bar. This is an area that we have problems with every year. The crush zones specifically have certain criteria, and I would encourage you to make sure that you're checking the updates for the rules, because there may be an update coming out soon about the crush zones that we'll be sending out. In addition, the roll cage and the crush zones, they have to be separate. And now this is well explained in our rules, but previously there was some ambiguity in this. But it's important that the crush zone complies with something that is reducing the force of an impact. Now that's not your roll cage, because your roll cage is there to protect the driver, not to crumple into the driver. So making sure that when you're designing your car, that those are separate, integral parts of the vehicle. Securing devices. This is the most common problem. Every vehicle, well, I think last year there might have been one vehicle, because every bolt on it was grade 8. Every vehicle has problems with ensuring that the securing devices are appropriate. So what this means is that every time we'll get a car coming in and they have a moving part, say on their motor's attached to their frame, but those attachment points are loose. So if you're driving down the road, those bolts could vibrate out and your car could be in a hazardous environment. We want to prevent all of those from occurring. One way we do that is through securing devices. So securing devices, make sure that you're paying a lot of attention when anything that is moving on your car, anything that involves braking, anything that involves steering, anything that involves holding integral parts of your vehicle together, that needs to be secured. I always tell teams, secure everything except the lug nuts holding your wheels on, because that's the safe bet to go. Now, ensuring that you have grade 8 bolts. Grade 8 bolts and grade 8 nuts, because a lot of times we'll have grade 8 bolts and not grade 8 nuts. Those are a way that we utilize to make sure that our cars are going to be stable throughout the experience as well. Forward visibility, this is another thing that comes up every year, and the reason why I bring this up is because this one is substantial enough to require dramatic alterations to your vehicle. In past years, teams, in this past year, a team lost their entire front section of their car because they could not pass this examination. So ensuring that you can see 10 degrees to the horizon is important on these events, these open track events or open course events, because what's the reasoning behind this is we want to be able to ensure that you can see a stoplight ahead of you, just as you would in a traditional car. So make sure that when you design your vehicle that, and this counts for all drivers as well, that the 10 degree to the horizon can be accomplished with all of your drivers being present. So we'll ask you to line up your drivers, and we'll pick the tallest guy, sit him in there, and we'll try it out. So I want to encourage all the teams that when you're designing your cars, you have a choice to make in who can drive your car. Now, however you want to make that decision is up to you as teams, but being aware of how that's going to impact you during scrutineering as well.
I have a question.
Yes?
So how exactly would you measure the visibility? Would you use a protractor or?
The simplest way is to use a laser level zeroed out at the eye level of the driver. So it's always going to be measured right at the eye level of the driver, 10 degrees to the horizon. There are other ways to do it. You can do some mathematics, look at the distance, measuring out a distance and then measuring up.
Can I add something? The way we will be checking it at scrutineering is using basically just a tiny...
We have a laser level, by the way.
Yeah.
We have a laser level?
Yes, that's what we've been doing.
All right.
We use a zeroed out laser level for that particular measurement right there.
I would also recommend still looking at just doing a tiny bit of trig if you don't want to acquire a laser level. It's really easy. You can use a broomstick and set it a known distance away from the front of the driver, and then you can, as long as it's cockpit.
Sorry.
It's gone.
Yeah, it's gone.
Okay, brakes. The braking, we talked about the need for separation, so I can glance a little bit farther along this, but what we're going to be making sure is that that vehicle can come to a complete and stable stop within a certain amount of time going at a certain speed, or with a certain distance going at a certain speed. So you want to be able to ensure that you're testing this before you get at the speedway. Set up your own course at your school parking lot or wherever you can test drive your vehicle. Make sure that it's going to comply with the regulations that we have set up. I would highly encourage, and not highly encourage, I would almost say you should do that before you come to the event. Other issues, chain guards. We require some sort of guard preventing a chain from going and hitting the driver in the back of the head. So that could be as simple as a separation between the driver, a thick piece of plywood or something like that. So, or anything up to a certified chain guard for motorsports. 5-point harness. We require all 5-point harnesses for the drivers, so ensuring that your 5-point harness is being utilized correctly. Now, if it's meant to be weaved onto the frame of the car, then that's okay, but you want to make sure that it's being utilized in the way that it was bought for and that it is a certified racing harness with 5 points. Signals. We made a little bit of an exception to make this process a little smoother, is that signals we do allow DOT approved. If you have a DOT approved signal for a car, not a trailer hazard light or something like that, then we can go ahead and pre-approve that when it does get to the event, assuming it's 90 degrees to the frame of, or to the ground, and that it can be seen in a traditional area like you would on a normal car. So that's one avenue for increasing the ability for you to make it through scrutineering. Inversely, we also have an allocation for the 100-meter tests and the other tests that we also outline in the scrutineering packet, in addition to the rules. So making sure that you go through that, do that scrutineering yourself, and that'll be a smooth process for you.
I have a question.
Yes.
When it comes to, for example, the harness, in traditional forms of racing, they check our SFI rating on our 5-point. They also check the Snell rating on our helmets. Do you guys check for that specifically? And if we're past a certain date, then we've got to replace those in the car before we can even get on the track. Is that something you guys will do? You guys check the SFI rating or Snell? Obviously, for those that are going to be wearing the helmet. For the rest of us, for our 5-point.
The harness should still be in date.
Mm-hmm.
No, we don't require a helmet.
We do not require a helmet for solar car driving.
Yes.
I have a question on the line. we started out last year buying one of the combo trailer lighting kits.
Sure.
It had red for a common red light with a stoplight and some blinkers and side lights of that with kind of all built in. But it was DOT approved, but it wasn't an amber light.
Sure.
Given that those are DOT approved, is that something y'all would consider actually making
Well,
those legal, where we don't have to have a separate amber light?
The reason why we have that in there is because of simplicity and uniformity, so that all vehicles can be identified in the same way. So we specify in our rules that we must have a red brake light, and the hazards and turn signals need to be in amber. Now that's there because we want to make sure there's uniformity among the vehicles for all of them that come through us. And so to answer your question is that would not comply with the rules.
Even though it's DOT approved?
That's correct.
Correct.
That's correct.
It needs to meet the letter of our rules. So if it's a DOT approved light, it has to have an amber option, and it also has to have that red option as well.
The DOT approval is talking about the brightness of the lights. So we don't have to measure at the 100 meters, or whatever the distance is, not for the which signal it is.
Okay, so to outline,
You're on.
oh, I am? Okay. So to outline a little bit about what we're talking about here is I sort of like to point out some issues that are pretty common. Right here we have the Choctaw car. This was from about 3 years ago. And then we have All Saints car right here. So to outline a few different changes here and some significant things is, one right here is to look at is the roll bar. That roll bar nowadays, unless it's waved in, model batteries. Okay, well, perfect. It's the end anyways. So what we have right here, this right now as is, it would not pass the scrutineering process.
Very good. David.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, I like to point out the All Saints one right here because the construction of this is pretty significant. Right here you have very significant frame members, though the important thing to point out is if you notice where the 5-point harness is secured right here, it's secured to a frame member that's bolted on the vehicle. Now, that would not pass because the fact that it is secured to this frame member that's bolted on the vehicle, it's not secured to a structural frame member. So they eventually had to weld this on. That's one example of something small that you don't really think about. Yep.
How about the crush zone? The crush zone have to be longer, or is that good?
No, it's not now, because it has to cover the blades.
Yes. So what I would encourage, in this upcoming week, there'll be a rule update that will be sent out to all teams.
There is a new picture in the rules showing the areas that need to be protected. So if they look at the current rules, they'll see that that will come.
Yeah. Certainly. But also be sure that you keep apprised of rule updates and everything of that nature. Okay, this vehicle is one that I really like to point out because a lot was wrong with this vehicle in passing it through scrutineering. You'll notice right here that the roll bar does not meet minimum dimensions, that the roll bar itself is bolted to the frame, that there are no crush zones for the driver, that there is no integral roll cage for the driver, that the batteries are in the crush zone ahead of the driver. There are a lot of safety issues in this particular vehicle right here, and so I just want you to point out, we'll point out the obvious on that vehicle as well. Okay, I'm just going to go through a few electrical problems, then we'll open it up for questions. If you have any ideas or concerns about the scrutineering process, I'd be happy to answer those. So the electrical problems, one of the largest issues is the electrical schematics. Every year the electrical schematics aren't matching what is actually being represented on the car. So ensuring that when you're designing your car, and ideally when you design your car you're going to be utilizing the same materials down the road, but we know sometimes things change, but making sure you have updated schematics. Heat shrink tape on the main system. This is really important because on the battery caps, some teams have utilized different ways to insulate, but we have a very specific set of expectations on how that needs to be insulated. Grounding of the main and supplementary battery systems. Now, it's obviously very dangerous if you have a grounded system on your solar car, a grounded main pack. That could lead to some very dangerous interactions and possibly some serious injuries. So we want to make sure that that's being addressed as well. So when you're looking at your car, making sure that you never have any grounds going to your frame. Wire management in the driver compartment. So we want to make sure that in the driver compartment, when they're hopping out, they're not ripping out some wires when they go. You want to be sure that when you're designing your car that things are easy to find and easy to track, and that helps us through the scrutineering process as well. So appropriate wire management not only is good for you, but it makes it easier to go through the scrutineering process. And in some cases, if it's not managed correctly, we'll have to ask you to fix that as well for your own safety. Final thoughts. Make sure that you take your time to scrutineer your vehicle. We give you the opportunity and give you access to that packet and the rules well ahead of time because we want you to have the opportunity to design your car and then to check it yourself to see if it's going to comply. Now, if you have any questions during this process, that's what we're here for. We're here to help you out. Send Dr. Marks an email, send the technical team an email, and we'll happily get back to you with an answer and a solution to any questions that you may have. We're here as a resource. That's where we differ from many other organizations. We set out these rules, we set out these expectations, but we also help follow through as long as you work with us. And now, when teams make it to the event and don't pass certain stations or have difficulties, it's because they didn't. Usually it's because some issues they thought would be okay, but if they would have just asked ahead of time, that issue could have been avoided completely. So open communication with us as the officials is highly encouraged to make sure that you're successful when you do arrive here at the event.